Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Hoare from TU Dublin and the Construction IT Alliance. I'm your host this afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the CitA Technology Trend Series 21. This is our second event. And during 21, we'll be looking at the top 10 technologies that will transform the construction industry. So I suppose the question this afternoon is BIM going to transform the industry, or is it already transforming the industry? This is the key question. So we're going to be hearing from a number of stakeholders this afternoon. RIB Software, Milan, Parmar will be giving us an insight into 5D BIM and how to deal with, I suppose, with changes, revisions and scope, but also how to change the cultural attitude towards BIM. We'll also hear from Conor McGinn and McGarvey from Delap and Waller, looking at the, I suppose, the perspective of the building services engineer. And also we'll be hearing from Davitt Lamon from C+W O'Brien Architecture, who give us an insight into what is trending at the moment, the new national annex in respect to ISO 19652 2018. And we'll also be hearing from KOSMOS, from Ross Griffin and Elia González in regard to BIM and the need for an integrated collaborative delivery. So in respect to BIM, obviously this is a term that's been used since, I suppose one could say, the late 70s, the early 80s. It became very popular in the early 2000s, and it's still here with us today. So has it achieved the transformational impact that is perceived in the industry? So that'll be interesting to hear about later this afternoon. Suzanne Purcell, General Manager of CitA, is just going to run a short video now. It's just really to give an insight into the work that CitA are doing this year, and then we'll get straight on to the program. Is that okay? So Suzanne, if you'd like to start.
I'm General Manager of CitA. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of CitA and what it is doing in 2021. It's particularly for those people who are attending CitA events virtually at the moment and who do not have in a position to actually meet with the CitA team. So firstly, CitA has been in existence since 2000, and CitA runs events and training courses to upskill the construction sector. The first event series, which I'm just going to talk you through quickly, is the Circular Economy Series, ASTRU. This event series is being run in connection with CIOB, GMIT and IGBC. We have Dynatic as a sponsor, which we are delighted to have, and there are 10 events in this series. To go through and to look at these in more detail, please go on to cita.ie website, go into the events section and go into the Circular Economy Series. Next, we have the Technology Trends Series, which is another 10 series event, and this is really looking at the top 10 technologies that will transform the construction industry. We have 6 great sponsors who are assisting us in running this event, which is great. And again, there are 10 titles for this series of events. If you are a member of CitA, these events are included in your membership. If you're not a member of CitA, you can register to attend each of these individually by going on to the cita.ie website, the event section, and this time choosing Technology Trend Series. CitA also has 8 regional hubs based throughout the country. Normally we would be doing face-to-face events, but since the pandemic we are doing virtual regional weeks. We'll be running 2 regional weeks in 2021. The first is taking place in April the 12th to the 16th, and the second will be taking place in November. These events are run Monday to Friday, 12:30 till 2. And if you would like to get involved as a sponsor, either as a speaker, please do get in touch with the CitA team, admin@cita.ie. CitA also has a training network through SkillNet Ireland. This network has been in existence since 2008. There is a variety of courses. Procurement is underway at the moment, and there are 105 different courses that are going to be offered to CitA's member companies in 2021. The member companies increased from 120 to 208, you'll see there in 2020, and there was a huge number of trainees and training days which were covered. Again, admin@cita.ie for any inquiries, or go on to the cita.ie website and go into CitA SkillNet training section. Lastly, we have the BIM Gathering returning for the 5th time, taking place the 20th to the 24th of September. We have 4 sponsors already signed up. There are still sponsorship slots available if you would like to get involved. The gathering has 10 different categories this year. Again, if you go onto the bimgathering.ie website, you will be able to look at these. There is a submission deadline approaching of the 12th of March for anybody who would like to get involved with a speaking slot or a paper slot. All papers have to be submitted by the 25th of June. But if you go on to www.bimgathering.ie, you'll be able to find more information on the categories that are involved in the 5th gathering. Also, if you want to stay in touch with CitA, the CitA website obviously will have the events section, the past events section, which covers all previous events that CitA has run, and you will have access there to any presentations or video recordings that have been done by CitA, the training section, the membership section, the sponsorship section. It's advisable really for you to follow CitA on the social media platforms, because that's where you will find the most up-to-date information on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or on Facebook. If you subscribe to CitA's YouTube channel, you're obviously going to get notified of all the new uploads from the events that are taking place and anything new that is being posted by the CitA team. So if you aren't already a member of CitA, we would love to have you on board. CitA's membership base did grow hugely in 2020. We have just under 500 member companies at the moment, but for anyone who would like to get involved, please do get in touch, admin@cita.ie. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And just to reiterate our thanks to our sponsors for the series, and just to also clarify that we've extended the gathering abstract submission to tomorrow. And you will have seen that the very first theme in the gathering is this topic today, the cultural shift towards BIM. So we'll be actually ensuring that we use this series as a kind of a vehicle, I suppose, to promote the various themes of the gathering as we go through the year. So if I could just ask all our attendees this morning to turn off your mics and your cameras, and I'll invite our first speaker this afternoon, Milan, to share his screen. And if you have any questions, if you could please pop them into the chat facility and we can take it from there. So Milan, if you're ready to share that with us. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all fine. Good to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Alan. I wanted to start by saying I come from a software and QS background. I worked as a QS for a while until I started working for Exactal, now RIB. Our main focus is I2 Costex, which some of you may have heard of. I've been attending these CIT events since the BIM gathering in 2015, and they've all been pretty great. Definitely enjoyed the one at Croke Park. So without further ado, let's go into the talk. Design change and scope creep, why does it occur? So this happens because the original goals expand while it's in progress. Changes to the building function and general alterations occur regularly during design phase. The effect that design change has can be detrimental to the project performance, and it causes major issues like cost overrun, schedule delays, and productivity loss. So regardless of contract and procurement models, a change is a change, and somewhere in the process it needs to be identified and someone needs to get paid for it. The most common way is by clouded comments outlining a change a designer has made and incorporating this into your takeoff, or overlaying a paper printout of the drawing over the previous one. With the use of technology, this process can be made much easier. So generally, the attitude that's adopted and what they say, the key benefit to BIM and all the data that is gathered from it is whether the client needs it or not. And it shows its real value during operational phase. Of course, that's true, and we want to propose the end-all benefit to the client. But I think BIM can come in all shapes and sizes and help to improve processes across all disciplines, and it can be incorporated to allow better management of information. So for example, architects now are able to model a lot quicker as opposed to 2D CAD design, especially with things like parametric and generative design. This means they're able to churn out more models and more revisions So I'm sure many of you have encountered situations where as soon as you're about to issue a cost plan or a BOQ, the designer sends a new iteration of the model. So if you're measuring manually, it's going to be hard to keep up. This is why investing in technology to help you deal with change is fundamental to achieving these deliverables. So with a tool like i2 CostX, we've had a lot of interest in the revisions feature in particular in the past few years. It's been a hit from the asset owners doing cost reinstatements on existing buildings to the cost consultants who want a full audit trail during the pre-contract phase. And after Rev 152, the client says, let's go back to 101, Rev 101, because that's a lot cheaper. That looked a lot cheaper, and I like that design more. To go back to that revision and that iteration is possible in CostX. You can compare the drawings together, and you can run reports to show the variance. This also applies for post-contract, and you can provide cost value reconciliations to clients, which are extremely valuable. An example that springs to mind, it was a large project just outside of Dublin, and the subcontractor put in a claim for 6 million, and my client said to me, I think this is too much. Can you help me identify this change in the model and see if there's any basis to this claim? It turns out that the claim was only worth around 2 million. So whether the subby was being devious or it was a genuine mistake, at least it was realized, and the benefit of doing this 5D exercise was clear. Whether you're doing it in 3D or you've got a 3D model or not, if you're managing a lot of building information, you're probably doing BIM to some degree. The question is, are you doing it to its full potential? And with this said, how your staff interact with technology, this will create and form new processes. And some say the foundation of BIM is people, policies, and process, the 3 Ps. You notice that technology isn't even in there. So it is down to people and the policies and process. So I'm going to just talk about a scenario. You're bidding for a project. You've been issued an IFC that has no object information in there. Maybe the objects haven't been properly translated to IFC schema. Maybe the wrong model view definition has been selected. It doesn't apply to what you're trying to achieve. You could also be so far removed from the design process that asking the designer to make these amendments to the model is near impossible. So we say collaboration is key. But sometimes, depending on the contract or procurement model, this isn't entirely possible. If it is possible, do your best to steer the delivery of design. In any case, you're not sure of the journey of this IFC. It could have gone from ACOSIM to Revit to Tekla. The file size is bloated and it's taking forever to download. So my advice is, it's pretty simple, but do research and have a look on the market, because there are hundreds of BIM tools out there all across Europe and America that you can use to enrich the model, clash detect, and validate that model that you've been issued, so that when you come to bidding and tendering, you're prepared for anything. So also, models may not have been classified and have something in there of use to a QS. So designers must be provided with guidance from a QS before attempting an exercise like this. I would suggest, if possible, to sit down or virtually go through families and types in Revit, if that's what you're using, and setting up shared parameters that contain ARM, NRM, ICMS, or any of those standards methods of measurement. And taking the time to do this will ensure that if you cross paths with this architect again, and as soon as he places that external wall or that window into that wall, the classification exists. So the exercise won't be repeated again, and you'll have that flow of information. We have a document, it's called the Drawing File Optimization, DFO, and we're always improving this document to give our customers, not only our customers, but the wider industry, a better steer on how to export and project settings in the design packages. So anyone that's using Costex, a QS that's using Costex, or any subcontractor, you're able to steer that design. Adding to that, you can classify the models and add information to the model in Costex if necessary. So what's happening in real life? We have customers across the world, and I've been lucky enough to work alongside many of them. But from what I've seen is that there isn't much confidence in the models, and QSs feel that it's prone to error and something could be missed. And then rather than using 3D BIM models to wholly extract quantities, they're being used to check the quantities that have been measured from a 2D takeoff. And I think this is the opposite of what should be happening. You should be extracting quantities, maybe 70, 80%, and then checking those quantities using 2D takeoff, rather than doing a full takeoff in 2D. So now I'm going to talk just about the disciplines, and I think the implications are a bit different. So in architectural, it seems that it's the trickiest because the spec isn't what is expected, or objects that aren't modeled, it's hard to create an accurate estimate from them. A couple of examples are timber skirting and finishes to surfaces. They can be hard to quantify from just a model. I'll come to that a bit later on, how you can supplement 3D extraction with 2D. But structural models, they need to be checked for clashes, but can work extremely well for speeding up the process in pulling out volumes and zoning and picking up tonnages of steel. M&E in the UK, it seems like these guys are getting so involved so late in the design that the cost ends up being a lump sum or a percentage. That being said, some of the M&E models I've seen are the most detailed I've ever seen, and they're great to extract quantities from because they come with a type and classifications. So I'm sure the guys at Delap and Waller will expand on this in the next part. So what needs to happen? So upskilling, so understanding what's out there and what's available to you. I'm urging professionals to attend events like these, which engage the attendees. Also important to make sure everyone's on the same page, bringing about more awareness about standards and bodies like the BIM Alliance, Building Smart, CIC, and they're there to support the journey. So that's what needs to happen first. So people have more confidence in these models and they're able to enrich them, and whatever model they receive, they're able to do something with it rather than saying, let's go back to 2D. Also, in terms of upskilling, at RIB, we offer consulting more actively now, and we're helping our customers to achieve these 5D requirements and deliverables. Still on upskilling, education. Most of these construction courses now have BIM modules, which is great, and they overlap with other disciplines to force them to collaborate, which I think is great. And the standards and process need to be more ingrained in the real world before they're taught properly as theory, but that's obviously an industry thing, and especially in regards to 5D. I think with CitA SkillNet and getting involved in upskilling professionals is great. The next one is supplementing 3D takeoff. So I did a talk at CitA Tech Live in 2018, and it's about how 2D drawings are still important for all disciplines and how they can be used to supplement your takeoff. So why are they so important? It's usually because keynotes, sections, and specifications that aren't apparent in a 3D model are usually drawn at the build-up of a wall on a 2D section or drawing. And someone who isn't so well versed in navigating views and object properties, they might find it difficult to find this spec. So it's a view that everyone is used to, a perspective everyone is used to, especially in Ireland, where bills of quantities are fundamental, and creating that document with just a 3D model can prove difficult. So that's why we recommend DWFX. They're exports from Revit, which include all the object data. They compress the file size, and importantly for this point is that they can export the 2D views as well. So anything that you've measured in 3D superimposes itself on a 2D view because it links the object IDs, which is really smart.
Milan, are you okay with 2 minutes? Or have you a few more slides?
I think, 2 more slides.
Okay.
So last point is awareness of file formats. I would say that the key is knowing the difference between file formats and where they come from is so important to your eventual outputs. The flow of information about the changes are sometimes unclear, and you want to ensure interoperability. We can help. We at I2 Caustics, we have support for over 20 file formats, and even if there is an unsupported file format, we can offer a workflow and advise a workflow. So just whizzing through this now. To conclude, I think it's fair to say it's almost impossible to eliminate design change, and it's our job to guide the industry and our customers to get involved as early as possible, if possible. Also, especially cost consultants, making sure that the way in which models are classified and modeled make it easier to quantify and build a budget. I'm optimistic about the future, and I don't think we're too far off from enabling more 5D digitization. If you want to know more, then feel free to get in touch with me. There are plenty of videos online on YouTube about the features I've mentioned, from takeoff and revisions and 3D measurement. And thanks for listening. I look forward to the next talks and panel discussion a bit later on. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Milan, and we do appreciate the support of RIB as a sponsor. But I think the message you had was very pragmatic as well. The fact that 2D is going to stay, it's the default position at the moment. And I suppose as a QS as well, albeit an academic, that confidence in working with models is probably there. And we all need to become more proficient in obviously file formats as well. So there's been a few comments in the chat there now, but we might just move on. Obviously, the vendor community, very important. You're the guys that are building the technology for us, but also the practical application of this. And this leads us really to the first insight from Delap and Waller. And good afternoon, Conor, if you'd like to go through your presentation.
Hi, Alan. Thank you. Well done, Alan. That was a great presentation. So my name's Conor McGinn. I'm a director in Delap and Waller. I'm joined today by my colleague, our BIM manager, McGarvey. So we're going to just look at the practicalities there of the cultural shift in attitude towards BIM from a building services perspective. So the first thing I'm going to look at is why use building information modeling, right? To do that, we really need to look at the building life cycle. So ultimately, we start planning. Now, what are the benefits to planning and design? So, I mean, we have this shift from, we used to produce indicative design in 2D CAD. Now we're going to the right the first time. We're using collaborative design. And we'll have a fully coordinated model by the end. We should have a coordinated model by the end of the design period. Now, the key element of that, though, is that more time is needed to produce that additional information. The next stage of the building life cycle then is construction. So this is where we see huge benefits, absolutely huge benefits. So there's improved coordination, less time on site. That's huge value. It de-risks the project. It saves costs. That's where all the benefit at the moment, as we see, is going. Move on to facilities maintenance. We did a bit of research with two of the main players in the Irish market at the moment, and they've mentioned that they're not currently using BIM. And if they were to use BIM, they would need upskilling. They need to hire a BIM department, and that the real key element there is that the clients are not pushing for it; they're not requesting at the moment. So from our point of view, that's a big, for the future success of BIM, that really needs to be addressed. Obviously, renovation, then, if there's a BIM model on file, it's a big benefit to the future design team and construction team. There's a better understanding of the building and its contents. It improves, you think it improves health and safety. You might not even have to go to site to do surveys. You don't have to take down ceilings to see what's there. You can just review this digital twin, per se. And it's obviously a good reference starting point to develop the BIM further. So the key challenges from an M&E building services perspective that we're seeing at the moment, and Milan actually touched on it, we are still we're still required to produce 2D information, and this is absolutely a requirement for contractual obligations. So what happens is we take the BIM model to a certain level, and then we essentially abandon the model for a period of time, and we produce our 2D sheets. We schedule everything in Excel. And essentially, we're saying all that information that we've pumped into the BIM model is not relevant for the tender period. And then what happens is we pick up the BIM model again after the tender period. We believe there's a poor understanding of the value creation and time needed from an M&E perspective. What is the value of the additional design input? There's huge value that we offer to the project, but we don't believe that all stakeholders understand that. As discussed before, FM companies have not adopted BIM, so that's a key challenge we need to address in the future. All project stakeholders need to be onboarded, and another big issue we're seeing is that not all M&E contractors are capable of using BIM, and this is leading to a tiered level across the industry. We've got tier level contractors, and it's actually driving a bigger wedge between those tiers. So industry trends that we're seeing that are actually pushing BIM forward. There's a big uplift in Ireland. I know UK have used prefabricated construction for a long time, but in Ireland we're seeing a big uplift in the likes of precast concrete, modular steel frames, and even more recently we're seeing SIPS panels. Screens on site is, they're becoming more and more apparent. Everybody's walking around with tablets. If you look at the pictures on the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see the column cube, I think they call it, where they actually land a container on site, and it's a touch screen 3D representation of how the building's going to look. So people can go in there, contractors go in there and have a walk through the building. And then you obviously have the tablet. We've heard from our contractors that we're working with that all of their sub trades are actually now trained up to use BIM, and that's for the top tier contractors only. Obviously, as you go down the tiers, they're not using BIM at all. So again, there's that big wedge being formed between contractors. 4D BIM models and beyond, as Milan spoke about the 5D BIM, that's obviously a huge benefit, and that's where we need to go in the future. I don't see a whole lot of that in Ireland at the moment. With the 4D, we're seeing an uptake at the moment. The time element is added to the model, and a step-by-step visual representation of the project. So for this, we've come up with a quick case study of a building we're actually building at the moment, and this really demonstrates the true value of BIM and design build. So we've got a radiology ward in Munster that up until November 2020 was an originally traditional HSE appointment, and because of COVID relief funding, they changed it to a design build in November 2020. So the build type is a modular steel offsite manufacturing used for speed, cost certainty, and improved quality. The key catalyst of this is BIM level 2 is essential for architectural, structural, and M&E building services. Without that, this project wouldn't work. And so then I'm just going to go down to a shortened, this is a simplified version of the construction program. This really demonstrates the value of design, build, and prefabrication and BIM. So you can see there that we've got an 18-week demolition and site works period, right? So the contract is awarded pre-month 1. They straight away start working on site. The detailed design commence at that period. We bring the detailed design up to a point of time, and the M&E tender period and appointment is issued, right? So, this is a huge benefit to be able to be clear in the site, etc., etc. That shows the benefit of the design build contractor. Now, what happens then is the project is then, it gets to a point in time, the BIM model, rooms, roofs, risers, ceiling voids, etc., are all agreed, and they press print essentially on the offsite fabrication, and it goes on into production for 12 weeks. At that point, we then have to abandon the model and we go into 2D production. We get the project out to tender, and then we go back onto the model again after the tender period. So then you see there's a further 20 weeks installation on site. So this is absolutely, like, compared to traditional, you know, this building would have taken 3 years through public procurement, GCCC contracts, etc., etc. We're seeing this done in 40 weeks. It's absolutely, you know, we need to learn from this. We need to be able to build buildings this quick, and BIM is the key catalyst. So I'm going to hand over to Cal there to go through some more detail of the design collaboration.
Thanks, Conor. So yes, hello everybody. So this is a project we've been involved in. It's actually recently going to construction. We found the collaboration process from the very start. We found huge benefit from it. All the design team, everyone was using Revit apart from the civil engineer. They were using Civil 3D. But even with the interoperability tools, we were able to coordinate with those guys for all their external services and incoming services. So the likes of the architect, we were able to coordinate for ceiling voids, all our ductwork above classrooms, the steelwork for all our ductwork, pipework, foundation work, coordinated around all that. And this time we had the fixed furniture as a Revit model, which was a great help for us. It means we were able to design our teaching walls as it was an educational building. All our small parent data were able to get laid out and designed from a very early stage. So definitely from a design perspective, huge benefit, and weekly DTMs, weekly workshops, we definitely ironed out a lot of issues at a very early stage. Okay. So clash detection, probably another one of the main benefits of using BIM in our projects. We've actually built clash detection into our normal design process in-house. So we have, for all our projects, we have weekly clash detection reports printed off, even just for peace of mind, to check our own work, just to make sure we're signing everything fully as it goes along, finding huge benefits in it. Then when it goes to shared for the wider design team, we're having weekly meetings, and resolving these clashes at a very early stage is obviously saving costs. We're not reordering steel or anything like that there for the sake of a mistake. So that's definitely working out really well. The sake of producing reports from the model, we can assign items, we can assign tasks. Everyone's tracked off, so everyone's recorded the progression of the site. So it's definitely a massive benefit for us guys. Okay. So this slide highlights the impact and project's cost that the BIM process can hold. So we can see there on the bottom of the screen, the orange line is our preferred process, as you want the BIM process compared to the black, where it's a traditional process. So we can see on the earlier process, everything's going to be compacted a lot more. As Conor mentioned previously, we have a lot more work up front, not necessarily more time to do this. So that's one of our biggest concerns and one of our problems with the BIM process at the moment. But seeing past that, on the wider project scale, we can have, as you can see in the blue line there, we have the most ability to impact cost and functionality of the building. And any changes we make, it's going to be a lot cheaper to resolve them at the early stage rather than throughout the design process and on into site. So this slide just sort of highlights the positive effect that the BIM process can have on a job, but with the same time needing to realise the more work that's going to be up front for a lot of the design teams. Okay. So this slide is just to highlight some of the Revit families, the level of development throughout the process. So LOD 100 is basically just a box. So on our initial design stage, what are we going to put? What size is it? Where's it going to go? Is it going to fit? So as the design process goes on, as the project progresses, we build up through the levels. So as consultants, we would generally produce the LOD 300. So it's going to graphically represent what's going to go on site. The object, the assembly, is it accurate in size? Does it have the connections, shape, location, the materials if we're running off renders for the client? Is it going to look in the model as it does look on site? All of that good stuff. And probably more importantly, the non-graphic information that's attached to the family. So all of your data sheets, all of your technical information, that's going to be embedded within this family. So when we go to run on schedules later on, it's back as Milan says, is having confidence in the model. So if we're having greater levels of detail, people are going to have more confidence using the kit, and it's going to help the BIM process move along. Okay. So this is an example of a product we used in that project I was recently talking about. So as you can see in the bottom left, that's the Revit family. It was actually produced from the manufacturer themselves. So down to the size, dimensions, the connections, everything was spot on. So from the minute we placed it in the model, we were confident that it had the full level of detail. Any technical information we need to submit came directly from the manufacturer. So we were confident in its use. How it looked, everything was spot on. So it's very reassuring to see a lot of the manufacturers get involved with producing these for the BIM process. And a lot of them are now getting accredited for the work, so that it's getting the rubber stamp. So it's going to have massive benefits. It's going to help us produce a better end product. It's going to get a better end product for the client. It's going to give more value to the BIM model. So it's going to help the whole process along. Okay. So just for our final slide, just a few notes on where we see the future success of BIM from our perspective from the building services. So generative design has been mentioned previously. So we're going to start using it for design for mechanical design. So we're getting instantaneous designs based on a set of parameters. So it's going to give our engineers more time to do their engineering work. FM engagement. So what I've talked about, all the previous data, technical information is going to be withheld within our model. So we want the FM team to be able to run the building to its maximum potential. All the information is there. They're better off using it. New talent industry. So BIM process is becoming a lot more popular. We're starting to see people come across from other industries, graphic designers, data, information. So all this new talent is going to bring new ideas, going to push the boundaries of what we're doing. Over the last year or so, we've seen COVID help speed up BIM processes, and for sure it's showed how important technology is within the construction industry, which might not have just been as realised in previous years gone by. So for collaboration, like weekly Teams meetings, it's just going to see it more to improve, and it's definitely helping the collaboration process. Just on a final note on sustainability, we're seeing a growing interest in energy consumption and green buildings. BIM tools are starting to comply with standard sustainability assessments, which is brilliant. So to save us duplicating up in work, having a sustainability model, we just want to see a few more further improvements in interoperability to save the duplication of our work, and just have it all centralised within the model. Okay.
Thank you very much, Conor and Cal. That was very informative. A lot of interest around, Conor, your comment about abandoning the model. We might come back to that. There's a few comments coming in on that. I suppose that's the kind of the pragmatic approach, bearing in mind that the rest of the supply chain maybe are not using it or whatever. But I mean, what's coming across very strongly is people, again, like what Milan said, Conor, you mentioned about clients, that whole, to get this cultural shift, we need to get clients requesting this, and we need to get smarter clients, requiring this going forward. So thank you very much. So plenty of scope for questions as we get towards the end. So our next presenter is Davitt Lamon. Many of you will know Davitt. He's based in C.W. O'Brien Architects. And if we're talking about what's trending at the moment, we have to talk about the Irish Annex to 19650 Part 2. So Davitt, you might talk us through that and give us an insight as to what's happening in the world of architecture.
Perfect. Yeah, will do. Thanks for the introduction, Alan. Much appreciated. If you're wondering who am I and what I'm doing talking to you about BIM while you're trying to have your lunch, I'm an associate and a BIM manager for C.W. O'Brien Architects. I started my BIM journey. I kind of first got introduced to BIM about 11 years ago while studying architecture technology at TU Dublin. I joined CWO in 2015, and shortly after, I started my MSc in Applied Building Information Modelling and Management at TU Dublin as well. I couldn't get enough of the place as it turned out, so I started part-time assistant lecturing in TU Dublin as well in BIM and visual programming. And just recently, actually started my second master's there in digital construction analytics.
Wow, so well done.
Yeah, she's glowing for punishment, I tell you. But this is just looking through this there, perfect. Picture of me up there is obviously from a pre-lockdown time when it was possible to get a haircut. But like I said, work for C.W. O'Brien Architects. Really good architectural practice. I get the opportunity to work with 48 amazing and talented people, which I really appreciate every day. But this presentation, or what I'm going to chat about today, is we're going to take a look at the Irish National Annex, the ISO 19650 Part 2, 2018. A lot of people I've talked to weren't even aware that the Irish Annex had been released, even less had read it. So I thought it'd be a good topic to kind of chat about. So hopefully you get something out of the presentation by the end of it. The Irish National Annex, just kind of give you a bit of an overview of what it's for. Excuse me. The Irish NA assists the user in understanding the Irish implementation of the standard, ISO 19650 Part 2, by translating the key terms and expanding on the requirements. The topics of activities alignment, information container identification, field codification, and information container metadata are covered in the Irish NA. And we'll try to cover most of those topics in the presentation, but we won't get all of them, but we'll cover the key ones and take a look at them. Just a couple of things to highlight before we get going. Personally, I wasn't involved in the working group that developed the Annex in any way, but all of the views and opinions are just those of an architectural practitioner. So, myself. The structure of the presentation is simple enough. Most people will be familiar with the UK National Annex published in 2019. So I'll use this as our baseline to draw a comparison between the two. Last month also saw the release of a core addendum to the UK National Annex. So we'll take a look at this too while we're at it and see what's been updated in the UK Annex. So a couple of learning outcomes. This is the lecture me coming out, I suppose. Just the one for this presentation. Hopefully we'll have a better understanding of the Irish National Annex in about 10 minutes time. But at the very least, hopefully be aware that one exists, or at least one exists. So when looking for a trending BIM topic, the obvious place, or the first place I looked was Twitter, as most people do when you're identifying trends. The Irish National Annex was being discussed there a lot, with a broad consensus of people just wondering the reasons for it being so different from the UK National Annex. So we're going to take a look at some of those differences now in a second. I guess the first place to kind of draw a baseline or kind of set the tone is with the information container ID. A lot of people would be familiar with this. This would be the standard one we work with in the UK National Annex, and it's very common in Ireland as well. We have our project code, originator, volume system, level location, type, role, and number. So this was it within the UK National Annex that was published in January 2019. Last month saw a core addendum published on the UK National Annex. So you can see in bold here a couple of updates. They renamed a couple of the information containers. So volume system has now become functional breakdown. Level location is spatial breakdown. Type is now form, and role is now discipline. So again, this is UK based. So how does this affect us working in the Irish industry? It's changed quite a bit. You can see some are the same, some are new, and you see some shaded in green. So project remains quite similar. We started off our information container ID with project, but then we introduced the topic of sub-project or phase. What's shown here in green, shaded green, are optional. So just those below 4-line are optional containers or optional fields. So we have element or system, which we similar to volume system in the original UK Annex, but now it's optional. We have spatial zone and level, which aligns up with level location or spatial breakdown in the core addendum. Both as well, these are now optional. We have information type, similar to type. Originator has a new location, so it's a little bit further down in the order. We have project role and number, which are also quite similar. So again, a little bit more detail on these. Starting off, we have the project field, which doesn't change much in the core addendum. This is what you see up on screen at the moment is the original National Annex. The only notable difference between the two is the character length. The core addendum that was published last month removes all character restrictions, just asking for them to be defined in the project information standard. So we don't have the restriction of 2 to 6 characters like we had before. The UK National Annex allows the project field to be subdivided for sub-projects, while the Irish National Annex takes a different approach. It has opted to introduce a preceding optional field for a sub-project or phase, but it has the characters marked similar to the previous UK Annex. Next up, we have Originator. So Originator is used to identify the organization responsible for producing the information within an information container. Information container, I always get a lot of people, what exactly is that? It is what it says in tin, anything that contains information. So it could be a drawing, document, specification, or minutes of a meeting. This is consistent throughout. It carries across to the core agendum, except the Irish National Annex. It moves it later in the order. So only difference here, still treats 6 characters, but it's just later in that sequence of fields. Volume element system. This is a bit of an interesting one, so there's a bit of a change here. Volume system in the original UK National Annex becomes functional breakdown in the core agendum. So a rename here or a change of terms, it's a good clarification in my opinion. So this can be based on physical subdivision or notional subdivision. It's always been quite a contentious field container, but functional breakdown I think is a good way of describing it. The Irish Annex uses the term element or system. So a little bit more aligned to the initial UK Annex with volume system, but in an Irish term we use element system, which is now also optional. So it also states that the codes should be chosen from an established industry or project-defined codification system. And also your ZZXX becomes Z or X. So here's the Irish Annex trying to reduce it down a little bit from those double digits to single digits. Also optional, so just bear that in mind, especially when discussing the next one. So level, location, and spatial. Similar change here. The level location in the original UK National Annex becomes spatial breakdown in the core agendum. So it's a rename of terms here, again, just to provide a bit more clarification and insight. Similar purpose, similar codes, same thing you kind of use it for, but yeah, level location becomes spatial breakdown in the core agendum. From an Irish perspective and our new National Annex, the Irish NA uses 2 fields for this. So spatial zone and level. So you can have 2 separate fields as opposed to the 1. And both are optional. So similar to before with element system, which is now optional in the Irish National Annex, spatial zone and level is also optional. It also uses different codes and character lengths. So previously, when you see the ZZ and XX become a single Z or a single X, when it comes to level, they go the opposite approach. So we're adding 1 on. So it's ZZZ or XXX. But the level codes change as well. So we got level L00 or L01 and so on. And we got a couple of character lengths. So 6 max for spatial zone, 3 characters for level. It kind of thing just to bear in mind between these two, both the level location that we're looking at the moment and the element system on the previous slide, would be when they're both optional, if one's omitted, it can be difficult to read or know which one is omitted when it's taken out of your CDE. So just be careful of that fact. I know some other architectural practices, even though it's optional in the Irish National Annex, as a practice standard, they're going to keep it in and keep using Z or X. Next up, information type or form. So there's a good change in this one actually to be aware of if you're working, particularly if you're working in the UK on your projects. Here, the UK National Annex with the core agenda makes a big change from its original. So what you're looking at the moment is the previous UK National Annex, which is type. This becomes form. This becomes form, and instead of looking at Uni Class 2015, the FI table for codes, such as M3 for 3D model or DOR for drawing. It actually uses BS ISO 29845. So it's more succinct list, it's a smaller list, and avoids, with the intention of avoiding duplication of the classification metadata. So Uniclass 2015 is also used to classify elements within your model. So they didn't want to double up on classification. So you kind of stepped away from Uniclass for this and renamed it to form. A little bit ironically, this is one field that the Irish Annex did inherit from the original UK Annex, so copied straight across, which is now changed. So interesting one. I wonder if, I know it's only released, but I wonder if the Irish National Annex will end up with a car agendum soon enough. So here in Ireland, we're sticking to the same M3 DR. Project, role, and discipline. Other than renaming the field from role to discipline, the car agendum doesn't make any major changes here. It does suggest, however, that if produced by a team within the appointed party, such as the client, then this field is used to denote the technical specialism of that team. So instead of having a code for client, I think it was K, if it's the client's project manager or the client's QS, then you'd use the project manager QS code as opposed to using the client code. Interestingly, the code for contractor has also been omitted from the list. So I think a similar implication is here used as well. So the contractor's specialism as opposed to the contractor. For the Irish National Annex, for project role, the Irish National Annex introduces 2 character standard codes. So instead of A for architect, B for building surveyor, the Irish National Annex uses AOR for architect or BS for building surveyor. Not BS for something else, but which is an interesting one. So all 3 are different. So this is just something to be aware of, depending on which one applies to the project you're working on. Number, which is the last one in the sequence, it doesn't change an awful lot. This is your standard, pretty similar across the board. So still sequential, still leading zeros. The car agendum, the new UK Annex, just asks for the length to be defined in the project information standard. So it doesn't matter how long it is, as with all its fields, it just wants it to be defined in the PIS. While the Irish National Annex actually lowers the minimum digit number. So previously it was about 4 to 6 numeric digits. The Irish National Annex allows for 3 to 6. That's the field codifications. So the kind of wider identifier or ID name that you'd be used to. But both of the national annexes also cover metadata. So this is your status codes, your revisions, and there's a bit of a change here from an Irish perspective. So big changes to metadata, both status and revision. Not so much of a change between within the UK's versions, but the UK car agendum does amend and reduces the number of S codes. So previously S1 to 7 is being reduced down to S1 to 5. And also those 3, 4, and 5 have been amended slightly. And it also deprecates the use of B codes. So B codes be gone. The Irish National Annex does something very interesting. Well, standards, as interesting as standards could be. But the Irish NA introduces a whole new system for status, which comprises of purpose codes and acceptance codes. So at first glance, I like this idea, but it'd be interesting to see how it's effectively applied. So what's good about it, if you have status codes for statutory compliance, for example, so planning permission submissions, fire safety certificates, disability access certificates, and you also have your standard ABC acceptance code, so accepted subject to comments, or rejected. So these 2, purpose codes and acceptance codes, work in tandem, together, hand in hand. And the last thing the Irish National Annex covers is revision codes. The UK National Annexes cover a few other bits, such as clarifications on information model exchange and a few bits like that. But the Irish National Annex cuts off after revision codes, so we'll kind of finish up this one here as well. I am a big fan of the Irish National Annex when it comes to revision codes. I think on a weekly basis, as a BIM manager within architectural practice, I'm constantly trying to have to explain P01 or C02 or the difference between preliminary revisions and contractual revisions. The corrigendum keeps it the same. So on the UK side, revision remains the same, while the Irish National Annex seeks to simplify it. So a little bit of a guide on this. It gets rid of the whole system and just keeps it as simple as can be. So start with 0, exclude prefixes, exclude leading zeros, increase sequentially by 1 integer, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and include a description. It also specifies that a revision must have a description, and it must be separate metadata as well. So a little bit easier to revision, and for those Revit users out there, it might be good as well. It can be a bit of a workaround, but it's achievable. It's previously in Revit. So last up, so I see Alan's camera.
That's fine. It's fine. No, fascinating. Yeah.
So I might be losing a little bit, but okay. So a couple of talking points to kind of finish us off a little bit. Firstly, the fact that Ireland now has a national annex, I think, is great, and it's a big thanks to those who put in the effort to make it happen. Of course, there's some areas that could be improved, but it does resolve a lot of issues. And secondly, with the Irish and UK markets so interlinked, companies operating and based in both regions, this is quite a popular thing on Twitter as well. Was there really a need for the Irish National Annex to be as different as it is? Obviously, this throws up some problems with companies having to update their quality management systems and upskilling staff to work in both areas. Also, sections of the Irish National Annex being based on the UK National Annex pre-corrigendum, it raises the question, will the Irish National Annex soon be updated to reflect these amendments as well? So I know it's only just came out, but does this make it a little bit out of date already? And lastly, with so much great guidance already produced on the UK side of things, from the likes of the UK BIM framework and others, will similar be produced for the Irish National Annex to help with adoption? So maybe this is something that the Build Digital project will cover. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely questions to start asking and see if we can kind of get this support from an Irish perspective as well. And that is my presentation on the new annex. It's not as flashy in BIM terms.
No. So important though.
Yeah.
You did a great job. I think it's so important that you raised this afternoon because thank you, David. I know it was of a technical nature, but very important. I mean, the corrigendum obviously is different to an addendum. So they're not adding anything to the annex. They're I suppose they're making revisions of an already printed. In the UK edition, they're making changes to the printed previous edition. So I suspect that will happen. And mentioning the UK BIM framework, which is basically a framework that helps in the practical adoption of standards, is something that we definitely need in Ireland. And so really, really helpful. Number of questions coming in. We'll get to those. Thank you so much.
No, but
I think you did a great job. So on to our final group of speakers. Back to, I suppose, the world of construction economics, quantity surveying. Ross, you're very welcome, and Elia. If you'd like to share your screen and bring us through.
Yeah, let's see if...
yeah.
Can you see it all?
Yes, we're good to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Awesome presentation so far. We're approaching this from a little bit of a different angle, I suppose. We're looking from the quantity surveyor's perspective and how our role is changing and how our needs to collaborate and to be more integrated in the delivery teams are coming to the front of the conversations. This presentation focuses on pre-construction as opposed to the execution stage. So looking at the design process and how we interact as QSs. We presented this to the SCSI a few weeks back, something similar. So some of you guys will be familiar with this if you were at that presentation. But yeah, just let me bounce on here. Who are we? KOSMOS, we were set up in 2019 in Copenhagen in Denmark, and in 2021, last month, we opened our Irish office to look at this 5D and integrated cost management process. As individuals, we have been working with BIM for 7 years or more, and all our projects over the last 2 years in KOSMOS are BIM projects, all delivered in 5D. So we have quite a lot of knowledge gained over the last number of years, and that's what we're hoping to do here in Ireland is help people in their journey with BIM. So we look at integrated collaboration, and what we're really talking about is, from a cost perspective and QS perspective, is value-driven cost management. It's not a case of us sitting on the fence or on the sideline anymore as QSs and quantity surveyors. It's about us getting involved in the conversations early. And for any clients out there that are looking at the projects coming up, it's vital, if you have a BIM execution plan, that you get your QS team and cost management team involved in the discussion as early as possible. They'll guide and help, as I will present in this. They'll help you guide through your process, but keep your project on cost.
As well as any stakeholders that are going to make use of the design that is produced. Let's say the maintenance team, your end users, everybody that will be will be using the design at some point. They need to have a say and input.
So value-driven cost management is an integrated collaborative approach to designing to cost, as well as continuous cost follow-up and control. This is a slide we like to show the whole time because there's many stakeholders on the project. The bigger the project, the more stakeholders you have. But at the end of the day, quality is everybody's responsibility. So as a design team are producing their design material, it's up to us as cost professionals to validate that, qualify that, and make sure it's to a standard that we can use the information. Milan mentioned it a while ago using CostX. We use CostX in-house to take a design, a 3D model in IFC format or DWFX without being worked on the project is extremely difficult because the challenges in importation and the quality of information. So we would say, again, in pre-construction, it's better to be involved in the conversation and looking at the quality, not just the quality in the building itself and the final asset, but the quality of information, the quality of design, the quality of cost, etc. Integrated 3D design, that's what we're really talking about. The QS and design team designing together. A small little diagram here. While you have a discipline lead on the top, that discipline lead will have a modeler. That's two separate people, as well as a cost manager. And next thing you have this group of people looking at the same information, and they need to communicate. In order to get quality in your design and your 3D information, these stakeholders need to be able to talk together and validate the design information. And that happens on a weekly basis, as Conor said. You mentioned having meetings, and as well as Tahal, discussing this with the different stakeholders and follow up on the BIM information. Vital.
I will add here, Ross, that coming to that previous diagram, while the QS will have a challenge here, and is that while the discipline lead is looking at their discipline and the modeler is modeling on her discipline, let's say, architectural, engineering, landscape, all the disciplines you have, the QS is actually be looking at all the disciplines in a holistic way. So the QS is going to be validating not only the quality of a single model or a single specification or a single drawing that is receiving, but it's also validating the information across. And this is a lot of work that cannot really happen at the very end. So it needs to happen progressively along the project evolves.
And that leads into this this slide where, while the QS, in our view, is the last discipline to review all information before it goes up to the client at a delivery stage or out to the market at tender stage. We cannot wait till the end, but this is an important task. Even though each discipline does their own internal quality assurance review and qualification of material, it's actually the QS that will look at it all. And when we say the QS, we mix in the services quantity surveyor, the M&E quantity surveyor, and the architectural and construction within our organization. We deliver both, and that's what we specialize in. So the cost plan is created and controlled during the design process with the disciplines. So you're creating your cost estimates, your bill of quantities during the process in a collaborative way, making sure that the information in the BIM model is qualified, making sure the specification and the diagrams and the drawings are qualified. So you can run the task of delivering your cost plans and cost estimates quite quickly at the delivery stage. So you're moving your hours and your time into more quality driven than product or production driven at the end of the stage. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the digital QS in the BIM world now. From a QS's perspective, what does it mean to work within BIM? And as we say, and we repeat over and over and over again, without integrated collaboration, you cannot succeed. It's very, very difficult. So a quick diagram here. This is an architectural model, and what we say here is that the QS needs to understand in principle how the architect designs and delivers their model. The software they're using, whether it's Revit or ArchiCAD or if it's structures, it's Tekla or Navis works for clash detection or Solibri, or whether it's Costex or Qubit, it doesn't matter, as long as we have an appreciation for that and understand that each model is different and each discipline, how they approach their design is different. And as you can see, we also look at the services. As I mentioned, this is a vital part because, as Conor will know, services is growing and growing in volume in our buildings, and it's becoming more and more relevant to have more detailed design on services, as well as our FM and facilities and maintenance services is such an important key part to controlling our cost in our operations. So having this knowledge on the services and using that valuable information that the engineers have produced is key for the quantity surveyor. And as we said in a previous presentation, I would prefer if the architect did my quantification for me. I would prefer if the services engineer did my quantification for me, because it's part of their design process. Now, I don't mean they do the quantity extraction. I mean they build the elements for us to allow us to do that quantification in an automated way. That's a very, very nice change in our traditional quantity surveying practices.
Yes, I will intervene here, Ross. By benefiting or by taking advantage of all this work that the disciplines have put on modeling this and designing this, we actually have reduced all these time-consuming tasks that are pretty much hours wasted and push them early in the process, as you have shown in the diagram. So now we get to understand better the building, get to actually provide more value rather than in this manual nonsense or how would you say, like the very manual process that we have been able to optimize
And that's true. The fact is that we have the tools to automate now, so why not automate? Let's move away from the manual heavy quantification and move into automation and value driven. Understanding the level of details is key here for the QS. It's key for the design team to know what level of detail they will provide at each of the design gateways. This level of detail tells us as cost managers how we should quantify what we can take from the 3D models, what we need to do on 2D, and how does that level of information develop during the design stages. The quantification from a Revit model in LOD 100 is completely different from the quantification of a Revit model in LOD 350. And for us as cost guys and ladies, we need to understand that so that we can again develop that design information with the design teams. Sorry, Elia.
You were talking about level of detail, but there is also mention for level of quality. So while the level of detail defines the geometry and how much geometry you are getting, how many elements, splits are you getting from there, if they don't have the proper information, those geometries are of not use to us. So it's very important not to focus only on the level of detail, but actually the level of quality in the information that has been produced together with this detail.
Yeah, this is a small diagram that we generally show our clients in Denmark about where we are getting our quantities from, the different design stages, how we're building our cost plans and cost estimates for them. In the early stages, it's a mix of square meter price and quantities and unit prices. But as the information develops down through the design stage, of course, we become more quantity output from the 3D models and 2D drawings and unit price based rather than high level square meter prices. And that's the same for the services and installations. We move towards a detailed cost plan and estimate rather than high level square meter pricing.
And of course, that's dependent on the type of contract that you are having. Yeah. So of course, this is a very project.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a generalization, really, rather than being specific to one project, a contract type. Here's some troubleshooting, an example of a dump from Revit. And I think it is cooling systems with condensers and compressors and so on there. Just to show you that we're missing a system type here. We don't know what these elements system they're related to. And this is a quality check that we would run on a weekly basis, taking the IFC models and importing them or either into Celebri or Costex and doing a dump and then qualifying with our discipline leads and modelers.
Not as a main function that we do, but because as part of our task, we need to assure that the information is there. So it's not that we are doing quality checks, it's that, of course, we'll face these issues at some point, and then we will help and assist the team on picking them up and catching them as soon as possible.
As we mentioned, quality is everybody's responsibility today, and in order for BIM to work in its truest form, we all need to work together to deliver the best design possible. And that's not just the best architecture, it's the best quality information before it goes to the client or the market or the end user. Here's just another example of information and levels and parameters used within in the model. It's important for us to be able to dig into this with the design teams and understand what information is key for us. And Milan mentioned a while ago about embedding the cost coding into models. It's great advice, very difficult, of course, if with the amount of change in stakeholders from project to project, but it's certainly something to look at in the future. Something that's also key is that you might have different models for different disciplines, and how those models are built up in terms of their information is also different. So architecture and construction is very element based, electrical and mechanical is very systems based. That's a key function to understand how we should divide our models as we're designing them, because the output affects how you structure your cost and bill of quantities. So also an interesting comment. And here's another troubleshooting. Understanding the quality and accuracy of information is of value to the QS. So we notice something in a model, we'll take a screenshot, send it to the engineer, or use BIM 360 to communicate. We've seen an issue. Perhaps you guys need to have a look at it. And it's adding more quality to the project. If we do a quantity extract here, we get these extra beams that we didn't need to cost, or we put it in our bill of quantities, and suddenly it's actually an error. So post contract, you're doing change management that's really unnecessary. It's because you haven't actually qualified the information. And of course, it's design responsibility, but again, you as the QS are using this, and this is reinforcing the idea of integrated collaborative teams, regardless of contract structure, in my opinion, but that's up for debate. Part of the design team. Sorry, that was just my 10 minutes up, so I'm just going to hit pause on that, or maybe cancel even. So part of the design team, you're there to support the team, and they're there to support you. So use the design team to also qualify your cost plans and cost estimates. Here's a small example of, again, a dump from Revit, and you can see that the naming description is different from the type description, and something is an error here. So we go back and we ask them to, can we check this, because we use this information in the build-up of our cost plans and cost estimates. You'll see an example of a cost estimate here that our BOQ, depending on your method of measurements, of course, and the jurisdiction you're working in. But this document is also sent to the design team, each discipline, to read through, to qualify, and you get comments back here relating to certain aspects of the cost plan, because the disciplines will understand quite well what they think should be included in the project. So again, you're increasing the quality not only of the design information but also of your costing information. And the final output of this integrated process is that you have a better qualified, coordinated design that's designed to cost. So what we're saying is you can practically guarantee your client of better quality, more coordinated design, and it's on cost by running this integrated process on the projects. And that's very important for clients to understand here. Some say there's a premium to this delivery. I'd argue that it reduces cost, but that again, that's also up for debate. Final delivery in your cost plans and cost estimates. We've highlighted here again a cost estimate where we try to automate text from the 3D models into our documentation, so we're not retyping this every time you do a manual process. You run the risk of error. We identify our BIM code so that the contractor can take the bill of quantities, our cost plan, and look into the 3D models and quickly identify what we're actually looking at. And of course, we automate the quantity. And this is CostX. This is our report from CostX and how we build up our CostX documents. And also, of course, if there is no code, it means that it's a manual measure from 2D drawings or assumptions or what have you.
Or even if there is a code, it might not be modeled, it might be referred on the specifications. But yeah, at least we are creating here like some sort of connection in between the information, so you can relate the cost to the specifications, to the model geometries. And
we're running close to the end of the presentation here, but the questions will come up about our method of measurement and ARM 4, ARM 5, how we deal with that in terms of automation, and there's a new revision for ARM coming out. Of course, there's certain elements that can be automated from the model, but in principle, ARM, we will have to use the model and try and derive the information we need to be in accordance with ARM. So there's quite a bit of a practice here. Another thing here, of course, is standardization. So standardizing your cost breakdown structures and standardizing your naming conventions and standardizing your templates allows you to automate this information and collect the data so it can be used on other projects. But perhaps data collection, data analytics from a QS perspective is another presentation day with CitA. Yeah, and
a bit more challenging since we will be depending on what we receive project by project, design team by design team, I suppose.
So just a conclusion. So Alan, value-driven cost management is an integrated collaborative process. We cannot do it alone. We need other stakeholders to help us with that. The digital QS needs to understand the 3D process and the tools used by the other stakeholders, but we don't need to be experts. We do not need to be experts in Revit. We just need to understand the principles. Regular communication is key within a collaborative environment, of course, and do not wait until the design is delivered. Work in parallel and set those processes up at the earlier stages when the BIM execution plan is being structured by the client and the other stakeholders, whether it's the architects and engineer. You as the QS should get into that conversation, define the standards you're going to use in terms of cost communication, cost breakdown structures, what is necessary. that BIM execution plan becomes the strategy for digital delivery. Quality, again, I say, is everybody's responsibility. And cost is everybody's responsibility. So we work as a team together to improve the quality for everybody. And last but not least, of course, if you want to chat with us in KOSMOS, just drop us a line. You'll catch us on LinkedIn, website, what have you. There's if you have your phone, you can take a picture here, the QR code that gives you a phone number, LinkedIn access, and our LinkedIn page. So just take your pictures there, and we'll chat offline. But I'm looking forward to these questions and answers now, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you. So I like the way you guys work together on that presentation. Well done, and very interesting. We can only, as cost consultants, deal with the information we get. So the quality is so important. The timing, the sequencing, the quality of all the information is very important. So what I do is I'd like to ask all the speakers to put their cameras on, and we might just open it up now to the floor for any questions people may have. I know there's a number. I can come in with some augmenting some questions that are coming in through the chat. So anyone want to ask a question of any of our speakers? I might start with one comment there. I know, Ross, you had a comment for Milan early on about DWXF.
Yes.
And he was talking about file formats. Do you want to just maybe elaborate?
Yeah, sure. Milan knows us well. I think we're in constant dialogue. DWFX formats, it's very good. It links your 2D drawings to your 3D models. But what we have found is sometimes we have issues with certain parameters when importing from Revit, that those parameters are not exported in the DWX format. That became a challenge for us in a project or two. I think it's the same as IFC, I suppose. There's always challenges on export of information if they're not if it's not structured correctly. But yeah.
So again, if we haven't been involved in the BIM execution plan, well, now we know. So now we will request that as a condition. Don't write any relevant information for the project on the instance parameters, because we cannot export if the client has any preference to do the exports in DWFX. Else, we kind of work now with IFC as an alternative, which is also good. Another challenge is there are a lot of softwares that the designers may use for designing, so it's not always that you will be able to load the Revit or any other sort of file into your costing platform. So also having like a common format that you can be sure that can work is something that you should include in your BIM execution plan to don't have surprises later on. Yeah.
I know there was some. Sorry, Ross, did you want to come back in there? Or
no, Alan.
Yeah, no, I have a comment there from one of my colleagues. Kevin, are you still? Kevin Furlong is with us. Kevin, are you here?
Oh, Kevin had a comment. Cannot unmute because of the.
Oh yeah, Kevin has a comment. From a QS perspective, the continual use of model in place should be prohibited in the EIR. This bad practice cannot be automatically scheduled or costed. Not sure if anyone can comment on that.
Is he referring to generic models or something like that? There are some families that are considered only as geometric shapes or masses, and of course you cannot get any dimensions from them, whereas you can still attach information to them. I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to, model in place. If
I'm not sure. Is Kevin still with us here? I know Enda Kerwin. Enda, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going on?
Yeah, you had a number of interesting comments. Do you want to your first one was directed to Milan?
Yeah, I suppose just before I even start, it was great presentations all around from everybody. And to be honest with you, it's just a nice change to kind of sit in on this and have everybody's perspective on the way BIM is working across the industry. Yeah, I suppose just the first comment, I suppose it's for Milan and Ross as well, and Elia as well. I suppose just to make sure that, I suppose from my own point of view within Arup, more times than not, QS their input is quite late into the projects, into projects, and I suppose when it kind of comes to what we deliver within MEP as MEP consultants, it's 2D deliverables are the contractual deliverables. So I suppose that's the most important part from our side of things with regards to the deliverables themselves, but also the fact that I suppose the models we do issue as information only. And I know one of my colleagues, Robin, has also kind of put a comment in further on down below, just mentioning that we as MEP designers, we don't include everything within our design intent model. So that's important. It's important to kind of note that when quantities are actually when quantification is taking place, it's important to kind of align yourselves with the responsibility matrix for that project, and just see what's included and what is not included within each project or within each project model, should I say. I suppose that's just
I support that, and that change from project to project and consultant to consultant. So your diagrams are very, very important in your MEP delivery, because they might show you the diagrams themselves show you the full scope of works in terms of valves, pumps, what have you, depending on what system you're talking about. And at the moment, we don't model everything, but I do believe in the future with the use of Dynamo and other script design, that we will be able to embed this information in our models as we develop. And I don't know, Cal, if you guys come across that before or anything. But you are right in the installations or services. Installations is what we call it in Denmark. Services is a unique one, I think, because you have functional requirements, functional descriptions, and high-level design, and it's a specialist contractor design delivery, and other elements are detailed design. So there is a mix within that consultant delivery that needs to be taken into account, I think, also.
Yeah. I just suppose there is a really good reference guide that we're using within MEP that's linked in the chat there as well. It's the ACEI document for MEP services, I suppose, and there's a bit in there about quantification and models and things like that. So yeah, I just encourage everybody to kind of download that and have a read as well. It's good.
I did see actually in the ACEI directory for 2021, they spoke about a number of articles in there, but they spoke about the work of their BIM group, which is shared with Engineers Ireland, and there's some great outputs coming from that. But again, it's getting all that together. I know as a quantity surveyor, member of the SCSI, great work being done there, but we must bring these things together nationally if we're going to make any progress.
But I would like to add to that, this applies to the services, but also to all the other disciplines, especially when working pre-contract. You cannot rely on the information without asking first, is this good? So you may find 3 pumps and think, oh, good, they modeled the pumps. But maybe not, maybe it was just a placeholder for a specific detail, and actually all the pumps are coming from your diagrams, and this is something that you need to clarify with the design discipline leads before you actually rely on any of the information that you are receiving on the models, drawings, you name it.
Yeah, interesting comment from Paddy Carroll there. Paddy, good afternoon. Paddy was talking about forming clusters from the model into trade packages. Structural steel, precast walls, internal walls. This is such a practical suggestion, because at the end of the day, the trades are going to be the people that are going to do the work. Why can't we do that? And of course, you mentioned elements, Ross, and the problem that you're having to rework to get them into elements.
The trades, in terms of the models and breaking them into trades, you'd end up having an incredible amount of models to work with, and it would mean that your workload, because there's a certain aspect of the mining the data in the models that you need to repeat. So importing IFC, if you have trade models, you'd have to repeat that task over and over again for every single model you do. So while it's good to break into trade packages at your tender process for contractors, during the design stages, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because you're now dealing with many different models, and that extra labor in order to manufacture the models, if you like, increases. So one thing we do, I suppose, in KOSMOS, and if we won't go on our own experiences, we follow a standard cost breakdown structure, and then we code that structure for trades on all our projects. So whether you need a trader or not, you still follow the same structure in terms of your costing, and your output can be it can be trade, it can be a specialist breakdown the client wants, it can be anything. But in terms of breaking down the models, I'd say that'd be a bit more difficult, and maybe David and Cal can come in on that and give their opinion.
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times actually. It's not the worst. If it's now, I'm only speaking from a Revit point of view, but elements or items within a Revit model, they're innately classified just through the Revit API. Now, they're not classified how we want them. They're not uniclass classification. They're not COVI, or they're not omniclass. But if you're a Dynamo user or you're familiar with Revit API, you can pull out categories from Revit model quite quickly. Whether it's walls, doors, windows, and it's just about mapping. So if you can get that access information and you've got a database such like Uniclass, you can map that information in quite quickly and use it as filters to break up your model. So you can filter by walls, which could be a system or package, and then export that information quite handy.
Excellent.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my responsibility, unfortunately, to bring this meeting to a close. I have another meeting at 2:30, so I need to get some lunch. But it was really insightful, and I'd like to thank our speakers this afternoon, Milan, Conor, Cal, Davitt, Ross and Elia, for really superb presentations. I mean, if you think about cultural change, it is about modification of an industry through innovation. So that's the bottom line. We need innovative work practices and changes in the industry in order to bring about cultural change. And you would have seen the BIM gathering is really all about that in 21. You know, innovations for future generations, because it's going to take generations, maybe another generation, to make that change. So just like to thank all our speakers, thank all our attendees as well. The CitA team, the background team, Suzanne, Sam, Shannon, Elia, for all the great work. The next event will take place for this series on the 22nd of April. And we're looking at IoT and sensor technology, because this is what's needed in tandem with BIM models to create what we call digital twins and so on. So we're just taking diving into that whole area on the 22nd of April. So, you know, some great comments and suggestions from Milan about investing in technology, investing in training, going to these events, these knowledge sharing events. I thought Conor and Cal, you did a great job on your presentation. More is needed for design, and obviously we need FM engagement and so on. David, I think you did a great job in also demystifying the whole national annex for us. I think that's actually very important. And Ross and Elia, you did a great job as well in really bringing, I suppose, while cost is everyone's, I don't know if it's everyone's concern, it's certainly the quantity surveyor's responsibility. And in order to do that, we need to get the right information in a structured way. So value-driven cost management, yeah, absolutely. So thank you, everyone. I see the sun has come out here, so that's nice. And thank you for the 40 or so people that attended this afternoon. And we'll hopefully all see some of you in April.
Cheers, Alan.
Cheers, Alan.
Thanks all.